In Chapter 19 of One Piece, we learned a very important name, the Sea Devil. Apparently, people commonly believe that all devil fruits come from this mighty Sea Devil. And though we've never seen this Sea Devil throughout the story, that ultimately doesn't matter. Because all that matters is if enough people believe in something, then that belief will turn into reality. If people believe in a Sea Devil that is above all other devil fruit users, then a Sea Devil fruit will be born, granting the user power beyond all other devil fruits. Essentially, the Devil Fruit, a fitting ability for the final and most important villain in One Piece. Because Imu is the devil of this world. He is the one who has turned the One Piece world into a living hell for so many. And Imu's abilities and magic so clearly embody exactly what people generally imagine a devil to be like. All along, Oda was setting up the grand finale of the story to be the Sun God versus the Sea Devil, with Luffy ultimately having to free the world from the devil's control and bring the dawn. So let's break down why the devil has been staring us in the face this entire time, as the very first time we learned about devil fruits was also the same point that Oda cleverly planted the truth as to the final devil fruit that we would have to face at the end of the story. But before we get into it, make sure to subscribe. But first, do you love One Piece's villains? Well then you're gonna love our new line of artwork, the Ultimate One Piece Villain Poster Collection. Starting with Lucci, Crocodile, and Doflamingo, we are going through the entire story of One Piece to showcase every major arc's iconic villain, all drawn in minimalist art style, with hidden layers of imagery in each work showcasing the most powerful moment from each of these classic villain storylines. And the best part is that you can buy 2 villain posters and get a third one free. So if you want to get Lucci from Enies Lobby, Crocodile from Alabasta, Doflamingo from Dressrosa, or all 3, then hit the link below and pick them up for your walls. Each month we'll be bringing the entire story of One Piece to life, arc by arc, villain by villain. So start your collection here. And if you've completed the full collection of the world of One Piece, if you have a poster of every island, then we will send you the final unlockable exclusive poster for free. One Piece's dream destination, the moon. Just tag me at Mr. Morgeman on Twitter with a photo of your full collection and we will send you the moon for free. So that aside, to begin with, Imu's abilities are very clearly based around the concept of the devil, starting with obviously the design. The traditional appearance of bat-like wings and a long pointed tail wielding a trident, this is the classic archetypical depiction of the devil. Along with that, Imu's abilities are all classically tied to the devil, such as possessing others, utilizing pentagrams to perform black magic, creating and leading an army of demons, even creating contracts with mortals in line with the idea of quote-unquote making a deal with the devil. All of Imu's abilities are inspired as literally as possible from classical beliefs about the devil. This is of course also symbolically fitting, as Imu is meant to be the ultimate evil that rules the world, and more importantly, the root of all evil, as we have learned over time that all the flaws of the world can be traced back to the oppressive system of inequality created by the Celestial Dragons. And at the heart of the Celestial Dragons' rule is Imu, the one who created the dystopic world that exists today. The notion that ultimately the world can only be freed once the devil that rules it is defeated is also clearly depicted in the mural, showcasing the overarching conflict of the story. We were shown Nika leading an entire army of all races and people against the great evil, seemingly the devil that is withholding the sun from everyone else. So with the idea that Imu represents the devil not only metaphorically, but literally he is the incarnation of the devil, now we look to where the concept of this devil has been mentioned before in One Piece. And we can see way back at the start of the story in East Blue, we first heard of the Sea Devil. Apparently the Sea Devil is a being that is commonly rumored to be the origin of devil fruits, as all devil fruits are supposedly incarnations of the Sea Devil. Now this is the first and only time in the story that the Sea Devil is explicitly mentioned, which at first could make it seem like this was just an early story idea that Oda threw out that he never really put that much thought into, as it was simply meant to be an old wives' tale, and the fact that it was never brought up again led to many readers not putting much weight into it. However, with everything we're seeing now, faced with the literal devil of the sea as the final enemy of the story, suddenly this early mention of the Sea Devil seems like it may have had a lot more weight than we initially realized. Because remember, we know that Oda from the very beginning has always had the ending of One Piece clearly in mind. It's most of the things that happened in the middle of the story that were unplanned, but the ending seems to have remained the same from the start. Obviously, there are likely a lot of additional elements involved in the ending now that the story has ballooned over time, but the final battle and the final villain, that is something Oda would have planned from the start, as that is literally what the ending of a story entails. As such, just because the Sea Devil was only mentioned at the beginning of One Piece does not mean that it's irrelevant. If anything, it could indicate that this was Oda quietly dropping the single most important detail of the finale of the story, the crux of the final conflict of all of One Piece. And while it's true that Oda did not mention the Sea Devil again after this point, remember that Oda literally also only ever mentioned the Sun God in one chapter, and then never again until Wano, where the Sun God then turned out to be crucially important to the broader narrative of One Piece all along. I believe Oda did not mention the Sun God again after this chapter so as to not make readers fixate on the idea of a god too much, and rather keep the story grounded and focused on the history of the world rather than its mythology. Just as it's likely that Oda did not want to mention the Sea Devil frequently, or else readers would quickly start to fixate on whether or not this great evil being might be the final enemy, rather than focusing on the developing, grounded narrative about the world government, the celestial dragons, and so on. So much like the brief mention of the Sun God, this brief mention of the Sea Devil also should not be taken lightly, considering the mural seems to be depicting a final battle against a devil, and the final villain of the story now also appears to be a devil-like being. So that leads us to the first simple question: is Imu the Sea Devil? It is unlikely that Imu is literally the Sea Devil, because remember, Saint Imu Nerona was actually a real person. He was once just a king of a nation, among many other nations that all had to band together to fight the Ancient Kingdom. It is also strongly hinted at multiple times in the story that Imu is a recipient of the immortality surgery. Oda practically spells out for us that this is the case during the Revolutionaries' discussion. And the immortality surgery would not be necessary if Imu was a supernatural being like the devil this entire time. Not to mention, Imu displays a lot of traits that seem to be very human. He seems to even obsess over Lily after all these centuries, and most importantly, the entire story of leading nations to band together to seize power and then rule the world while living in luxury as self-proclaimed gods seems more like the drive of a greedy man with a god complex rather than an actual, literal, supernatural deity. Just in general, it would also be really bizarrely against the themes of One Piece if Imu actually was some sort of all-powerful supernatural being and not just a greedy man who gained obscene power, because that would defeat the entire point of the story. Arc after arc, we meet rulers who believe themselves to be all-powerful gods, who believe they're somehow special and better than everyone else, when the whole point is that in reality, they're just normal people who gained power, who then let it go to their head and abused it. Just because Enel got the Gorogoro no Mi and became all-powerful, that did not mean he was an actual god. He was still just a man. Just because Doflamingo was born with celestial dragon blood and was able to abuse his strength to seize Dressrosa, that didn't mean he was an actual god. He was still just a man. The recurring enemy of the story has always been normal people who get a chance at power and then anoint themselves as gods, because One Piece is largely a commentary on the greed of man. The whole point of these recurring villain figures is their contrast to Luffy, who, despite gaining such immense strength himself, never believes that he is better than anyone else and never attempts to use his power to rule or anoint himself in a position above others. As such, Imu really was just one of many human kings who led a rebellion against the greater power, the Ancient Kingdom. Imu seemingly gained great power himself over the course of this war, and by the end, when he had taken over the world, he was able to anoint himself god of the entire world and became immortal so that he could rule it forever. That is the same type of story One Piece has been telling so far, of what greed and thirst for power leads to. Imu is just the final version of the recurring Enel, Doflamingo, Orochi type of villain that we've had throughout the narrative. A man who gained too much power and called himself god. If Imu is not a man and is literally just the big bad devil of the One Piece world, literally Satan himself, a supernatural evil being who's just the embodiment of evil, then the whole point of the story is out the window. Literally 1100 chapters of brilliant, poignant messaging about the nature of man, society, and equality is replaced by just fighting the nasty boogeyman. So bottom line, whatever devil powers Imu is displaying, it does not mean Imu is literally the devil. Now, I've heard some people say that maybe Imu got his powers from the actual Sea Devil then. Maybe he made a deal with the devil. Except then the bigger issue is that, in general, despite all the mentions of gods and deities and such, One Piece actually is very deliberately trying not to stray into the territory of whether or not any of these gods or devils actually exist. In fact, the one arc that we actually got Oda's messaging surrounding the concept of gods and such, the resounding message was very clearly that you are not supposed to put so much stock in the existence of gods. The narrative, in fact, rejects the idea of literal gods being the answer. Note, One Piece does not reject the general idea of religion, but the entire message the story stresses is that the real power comes from our beliefs. One Piece is a story about the human spirit, the power of our own dreams, our own imaginations. That is what actually matters. It does not matter whether or not gods actually exist. What matters is the hope that these beliefs give us, because we ourselves have the power to bring our dreams into reality. That is what the entire explanation of Devil Fruit Origins was meant to make clear. All things in this world are brought into reality through the power of our dreams, the power of our hopes. A lot of readers to this day are still somehow confused about the concept of the quote-unquote real Nika and what the real Nika was like. That's literally never going to be a thing in One Piece. We've never seen an actual god. We are not supposed to worry about whether or not actual gods exist. All that matters is that with the power of humans' dreams and hopes, we ourselves can bring our beliefs to life. The Nika fruit is born out of the power of people's beliefs in Nika. Through our dreams, we can make Nika a reality. Oda is never going to answer whether or not a real Nika exists, because that is literally irrelevant to what the story is about. It's the same reason that most of the gods mentioned in the mural are seemingly metaphorical. For instance, the sea god did not get angry and destroy the world. The world was just flooded by mankind's own destructive weapons. So the same way Oda has repeatedly drilled into us not to put too much stock into the idea of gods and supernatural beings, and that it is irrelevant to the story whether or not they actually exist, it is very unlikely that there is secretly some literal sea devil out there that we need to be worried about. Especially considering that the one thing the sea devil supposedly does is create devil fruits, which we have been outright told is not the case in a very elaborate explanation. The sea devil creating devil fruits was just a rumor that many people believe, much like how the notion that there are devils inside each fruit is just a rumor that people believe. Oda gave us the true explanation of devil fruits through Vegapunk, that devil fruits are something far more interesting and far more meaningful. They're born through the power of mankind's own dreams, which is far more fitting with the themes of the story, much like how Haki is born from man's spirit, or even how Klabautermans are born from man's love. But the interesting point amongst all of this is that because people in the One Piece world incorrectly believe that devil fruits originate from a mythical sea devil, well, the irony is, everything that man imagines can become a possibility in reality. If devil fruits are people's imaginations brought to life, and enough people believe in a sea devil, well then an actual sea devil fruit will be created. This fruit, the sea devil fruit, is what Imu has eaten. See, Imu is the sea devil in the same sense that Luffy is Nika. People believed in these concepts enough that they became real through devil fruits. Those fruits were eaten, and now both the sea devil and Nika both actually exist in reality. And most interestingly, each devil fruit will be as powerful as the concept that fueled it. For instance, the ability to turn into a jacket is a fairly weak ability that people dreamed up at some point, and so this isn't a particularly powerful fruit. However, people who believed in the concept of Nika imagined a being who was a literal god of liberation, capable of saving people wherever he went, and so the actual Nika fruit is one of the most powerful fruits imaginable, with godlike abilities to warp reality. And as for Imu's fruit, well, the sea devil is a concept that people conceived to explain the origin of all devil fruits, meaning people began to attribute the power of all devil fruits to this one deity that they concocted, and that belief would naturally lead to the creation of the ultimate devil fruit, more powerful than any other. It's an interesting cycle. People's imaginations are what create devil fruits. However, people aren't aware of this, and so they imagine that a sea devil is the being that is creating all these devil fruits. The people's beliefs in this sea devil ironically then actually creates the sea devil fruit. And fitting with the people's beliefs, this particular devil fruit spawns an all-powerful being with powers above any of the other devil fruits. And the sea devil fruit user seems to be capable of doing exactly what people believe the sea devil can do. People believe the sea devil creates other devils as incarnations of itself, and that's what Imu can do. That seems to be exactly how Imu turned the Gorosei into devils. See, none of the Gorosei are labeled as actual devil fruit users, but they clearly appear to be mimicking mythical Zoans, exactly as though they were devil fruit users, with their 3 forms and the customary clouds of awakened Zoans. Yet the Gorosei are all labeled as actual yokai, indicating that they are not actually fruit users. Keep in mind the Gods Knights are labeled as actually having devil fruits, so it seems that it's only Imu's direct subordinates, the Gorosei, who clearly take on these monstrous devil forms that are clearly not actually from devil fruits. This is the result of Imu's Sea Devil powers. He has the abilities that people believe the Sea Devil to have, to create Devil Fruit users. And so Imu can create his own monstrous Devil Fruit users without them having to actually eat Devil Fruits. It may sound like a bit of Devil Fruit inception here, but it makes sense when you think about it. Devil Fruits are essentially just a mirror to people's imaginations. And if people imagined a Sea Devil that can create Devil Fruit users, then you get the fruit that Imu ate, a Sea Devil Fruit user who can create his own Devil Fruit users. Imu's creations are still not technically true Devil Fruit users due to never having eaten an actual Devil Fruit, hence the lack of Devil Fruit card. This is also likely very similar to what Imu did with Dori, Brogy, and the other giants of Elbaf. These are more instances of Imu creating monstrous devils just as people believe the Sea Devil can. Imu's ability to grant immortality is a bit trickier to decipher, as again the heavy implication was that Imu himself only gained immortality through the Ope Ope no Mi operation. However, it's possible that as part of the Sea Devil's abilities is to make devil contracts with others to grant powers, by extension, Imu also became able to grant his immortality powers to his subordinates. Other aspects such as traveling through the abyss and possession seem to simply be other abilities people likely imagined the devil to have, and hence Imu was able to gain them upon eating his fruit. And so with this, everything about Imu comes together. If devil fruits are only as powerful as what people imagined each ability to be, then if many people imagine there is a Sea Devil who is the all-powerful being that is the source of all devil fruits, then this belief would have produced a fruit with the abilities of such an all-powerful being, a being that would essentially be above all other devil fruits. And naturally this being would be able to create seemingly other devil fruit users himself, as that is what people imagined that he could do. As the supposed devil, all sorts of other black magic abilities could be used by this being as well, such as the abyss, possession, and the ability to make deals to grant power in exchange for control. And of course, this fruit ability would make Imu the perfect final villain of the story, the root of all evil in the One Piece world, and the devil that was foreshadowed would have to be defeated to bring the dawn. So let me know in the comments below if you agree that Imu has the Sea Devil fruit, and if you enjoyed this video then definitely like and subscribe, and if you want to hear why I believe Imu's fruit was the final devil fruit that was ever created, then you can get my extended thoughts on my weekly podcast by becoming a member, or by supporting me on Patreon, link in the description below.